All right, let's continue a conversation and get a reaction to all of this from member of the House Armed Services Committee, Republican Congressman from the great state of Ohio, Michael Turner. Congressman, great to have you here in studio with us. I think Mark is, as he said, is already jealous. So glad to have you here. Let's again start off with what we wanted to touch on, your reaction. You were sitting here, of course, when we got that announcement that the Fed has cut the rates 25 basis points. As expected, we heard comments that it should be cut 100 points. Do you think that Mr. Powell will catch up and do some bigger cutting before the end of the year?
Well, Katrina, this certainly is good news, and the Fed has taken, I think, correct action. But I think, John made an excellent point earlier in that, they're somewhat flying blind. They're not really totally blind. I mean, we certainly have the economic information that, as all of your commentators indicated, show that the Fed should be cutting more. We need the economic growth. Certainly the indicators are there that would substantiate they're doing so. But as a result of the government shutdown, we really are seeing that, across the board implications of what's happening with government and government information, which certainly would have impacted the Fed and Fed's deliberations here. We need to get the government open again. It's impacting families. It's impacting government operations, certainly government safety. And that's something that certainly we hope that the Democrats in the Senate will see that American families are being impacted. They need to get back to work, and they need to vote to open the government.
We'll see how that impacts the government shutdown, obviously, and then this rate cut, whether or not it'll impact Americans at home and their pocketbooks. Let's shift here, though, because there's this high-stakes meeting. You've got Xi meeting with President Trump. This is happening tonight. Clearly, with the time change, it's going to be we're going to be watching it a little bit later on. But what do you make of this? And how important is it that we get a good trade deal with China? What are you watching for?
Well, this certainly is very important, and it's great that the president has, both in meeting with our allies in Japan and South Korea, working for trade deals. When he first started unveiling the tariffs, people weren't really understanding what he was doing. But as your commentators have pointed out, his goal here is trade deals that impact the American economy, that are in favor of the American economy. We've been negatively impacted by trade. We want to be positively impacted by trade, and we want to have positive relationships with our allies. Now, China is an economy that has taken advantage of us. And certainly in the areas of fentanyl, that is an area where they have put our American families at risk, as you were saying. So here is one where he is using our economy. He's using the power of the presidency to bring Xi to the table and hopefully to get positive trade deals, but also use that power so that Xi has to use his presidency to protect the American public.
Yeah, absolutely.
Congressman, while we have you here, I have to ask you about this. You are a member of the House Oversight Committee, and of course, that report, very big report released yesterday. In it, Chairman Comer writes this, quote, executive actions performed by Biden White House staff and signed by the Autopen are null and void. We are calling on the U.S. Department of Justice to conduct a thorough review of these executive actions and scrutinize key Biden aides who took the fifth to hide their participation in the cover-up. Lots of chatter about this, of course, yesterday. Tell us about the committee's decision. Tell us about what happens next. We know it has been referred to the DOJ.
I think what you have here is a real example of when you have a president that has diminished capacity and you have the presidency go on autopilot, you really have to be concerned about what happens to the auto pen. And that is the authorities of the president when they're being used by others. You have to be very concerned.
Right. Who's making those decisions?
Right.
Probably not an elected official.
The authorities are certainly to be very concerned about, and this is an example where there's grave concern.
Is there a difference between him knowing about this happening and him actually approving some of these parts?
I think it's both, correct? Yeah. And it's not just scope. It's just like, where do the authorities land? Where do the authorities lie? And then what are the implications of those? Because they have grave implications.
And again, if this also goes through the DOJ, if there's evidence there, do you think maybe we might see some charges or some convictions?
I think it relates to both those who are wielding those powers and authorities and also to the actual actions that were taken. And, are those authorities as they were being wielded, and were they effective or were they not?
Time will tell whether or not anyone gets held accountable for this. Clearly, these investigations are a good starting point for that, and where we go from here, we'll continue to watch.
Absolutely.
Congressman Turner, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Congressman.